when I was asked about, when it was announced that Meghan was engaged to Harry, and Woman's Hour, I think that was one of the first shows that I went on to talk about it. And they said, surely this is a good thing because it's going to modernize the royal family. And that's when it started. I started hearing that rhetoric over and over again. I thought, oh, so this is the line we're taking with this. We're going to use this black woman, or this, a biracial woman, almost as the sacrificial lamb, to rebrand what the monarchy is. But it's not going to change. In fact, it will allow it to become more violent because there's a black face there. And whenever I would go on, I would try to kind of guide everyone along the lines of, it's not going to modernize anything. It's not going to change anything. And it was frustrating because I would watch other black people online. I remember when it was announced, the engagement, and people were like, oh my God, we're going to have a black woman in the palace. Yes, yes, yes. I know that wedding day is going to be lit. That people are going to be wearing this attire, that attire. And I was like, no, they're not. No, they're not. There's a reason why she made it that far. Lupita Nyong'o wouldn't have made it that far. In terms of like skin color, features, everything, there is a reason that Meghan specifically made it that far. And even that was not good enough. Just to know that her mother was a dark-skinned black woman, that was really, really frustrating, I think, for the structure, the institution as a whole, because she's rather white assuming. You see her, you don't immediately think, she's got black heritage.
I actually watched Suits way back when it was on, and didn't know she had black heritage at all. So I feel like it's very different, the treatment of people.
Yeah. And so the celebration really frustrated me because, again, I have to understand that this is strategized amnesia. People think that this is going to change things. There's this sort of weird, I don't know, meritocracy where it's like, oh yeah, well, this is progress. Somebody's in there. And I think we have to have that conversation about, why do you need a face or somebody that looks like you to be participating in your own oppression for you to, want that oppression to continue? Surely you just don't want it.
Isn't there a kind of misogyny there as well? Because we had this with Kate talking about progress and the fact that she was a commoner, this is a stupid term because there's no such thing as a commoner, because there's no such thing as a royal in, other than the family they're in. But it was this idea that it's meritocratic. If you marry into, you're achieving something by virtue of the husband you've chosen, which is a very odd notion of meritocracy, in the sense that, if we were celebrating the fact that someone like Meghan Markle had been elected our head of state, that would be a very different thing, and the contrast between Barack Obama being president and Meghan Markle being married into the family is enormous. So it's a very odd narrative. But it was what struck me is that the very short period of time between the wedding and the falling out, because in my book I quote, and I reluctant to mention his name, but Piers Morgan, because just before the wedding, he was on an American documentary, and he said, she is marrying into a family that, let's face it, has a problem with race. And 18 months later, he was saying, I've met all the royals. There's not a racist among them, And so it suddenly became that because Meghan Markle was the focal point of this anger that she somehow damaged their brand, that all of a sudden the racism was gone.
Yeah.
And it was so obvious as well.
And I think, Piers Morgan is another bag of trouble on his own. But I think what's so interesting about him is that he knows the truth. He just chooses to play around with it whenever he likes. So for him to say that previously and then almost change his tune later on, because like you say, the focal point had become Meghan Markle. People had seen her black mother, and I still have the opinion that she would have been treated slightly differently had her mother been white. There's something about that. It's the very black mother attached to Meghan, regardless of how light her skin is, that really threw people off, because it can't be ignored. Whereas a white mother, there's something about that, again, still linked to misogyny, but there's something more acceptable about a biracial woman having a white mother going into the royal family. There's a higher likelihood that she will assimilate to the kind of structure that they have there. Maybe she wouldn't have, but they wouldn't have known that. They would more likely take her...
estranged from the white father.
And estranged from the white father. And what does that tell us about and the way that then the media started trying to kind of push him out to us, and he's the victim in all of this. How dare his black adjacent daughter stop talking to him? She's clearly, vying for fame. She's horrible. She's a pariah. Because in that, they couldn't afford for the white man, her father, to be seen as like worthless and useless.
And all the things that they've said about, they've started throwing accusations around about Meghan Markle being a bully and so on. These things have been said in books and so on about William and about Charles and about other royals, but that just gets quietly forgotten, and it doesn't become this source of constant attack because they don't want to attack them. So it's all duty, and they care about the environment or whatever it is.
But that's what they say about any woman and black person in a position of power, a black woman specifically. That's what they said about Kamala, isn't it? Oh, she's a bully. Her staff didn't actually like her. There's a lot of problems with her. And do you think that those comments about her being a bully were racialized? And
absolutely racialized. When from that first sort of headline that said straight out of Compton, I said, oh, here we go. Like they were going to really ride on the fact that she has this black. It was, for me, the more we look at it and we peel it back, it's the black mother that was really the issue. Had she had a white mother, it would be slightly different, because there's already a notion about black men anyway, a stereotype about black men, unfair, fair enough, that, so if her black father had behaved the way that her Meghan's dad had been behaving, it would be like, oh, well, yeah, I can believe that he wasn't great as a man and she would have to estrange herself from him. Absolutely understandable. Let's take her under our wings because he's terrible. But they couldn't quite get that narrative going with the way that Meghan's family life was set up. But I've had it. You're aggressive, you're angry, you're a bully. And usually it's when you assert yourself and say, I don't want to do that thing, and you have a boundary. I'm not saying that she's the nicest person ever. I don't know her. But I've heard that rhetoric so much that it's very likely that it's untrue or it's not wholly true. And it's part of misogynoir, that kind of racialized sexism, that this woman has to be a bully because she's, of black heritage and she's asserting herself. This is not good.
Yeah. And it's interesting that there are, she's in the milieu of two very privileged white men who've been accused of being bullies, and also the Queen, who, when the Race Relations Act came in, asked for an exemption for her household. It doesn't appear that that the narrative is what the media sort of represented it as when you look at the facts of where she was. And you can imagine them calling her a bully because, of course, she's going to disagree.
There's the faux surprise that anybody might call the royals racist. Because the history of racism from the royal family is, there's a litany of accusations against quite a few of them, Philip being the infamous one, where, again, it was just all brushed off as not that serious. But it was just, and it was always, a gaffe. It was like, it wasn't a gaffe, it was just offensive, it was racist, and the sort of thing that would get a politician sacked. You can't sack the husband of the Queen, so we just brush it under the carpet and pretend it didn't matter. But Charles has had the same accusation as well, about that sort of gaffe.
And you've talked about this in the media quite a bit. I noticed on a Talk TV interview from December 2022 with Richard Fitzwilliams. You said, which I thought was just really kick-ass, you referred to a white supremacist ideological construct of the monarchy. And he waffled a bit and then sort of replied, well, it's continuity at a time of change. I just thought, hold up. Has anybody noticed?
It might be white supremacist construct, but it's our white supremacist construct.
Exactly, We're consistent.
And I was just wondering, as I was watching, doing sort of the research for this episode and watching all your appearances, I noticed one presenter suggesting that we keep it neutral. I think that was that same interview, actually. And then another interview where there was a sort of ticker on the bottom of the screen, and it was talking about Meghan Markle and these alleged things were happening, and it was in quotation marks. And I'm wondering, does it feel, because it feels like you're being invited on to create this neutral space or to be unbiased, and yet the presenter always feels like they're really on the side of the monarchy. And my impression as I was watching all these videos was thinking, God, you're really brave, because I wouldn't want to do that. And I'm wondering just how it feels to be in these adversarial spaces, and whether you do get kind of sweaty and feel like, oh God, feel that attack. How does it?
No, you can wake me up at any time of the night. If you tell me that it's about abolishing the monarchy, I'm 100% on board. Like, wake me 2:48 a.m. Wake me up. Like, I'm all in, 100% in, and there's nothing that can scare me about it or make me nervous about it, because it is the truth, and a lot of us just need to wake up to that fact. Until we're able to divest from this structure and from the monarchy, Britain really doesn't stand a chance in the world that is emerging right now. Britain will not stand a chance, because it's holding on to something so draconian, so antiquated, and it doesn't benefit the average person. People are experiencing homelessness. Disabled people aren't getting the support that they need. Old people aren't getting the support that they need. But we've got millions to give people that don't give a damn, that they don't want anything to do with the public. In fact, sometimes you catch little snippets of, camera footage, and there's a general disdain in their expressions, like they even have to do this. The coronation, Charles looked miserable. He just looked absolutely miserable, but he has to go through the process. Woe is him. And he gets all of this money to do it. So I'll show up whenever I need to show up and wherever I need to show up. I think what I find most frustrating about those interviews is the way that when I'm making a point that if somebody, the public, somebody was watching it at home, it could get them thinking in a slightly different way. That's when it'll be like, okay, let's go to the next person and let's have this person